the Joe Rogan experience?
There was no, to my knowledge, there hasn't been any correlation of that. And the creatures that are described in Socorro in New Mexico and in Valençol in France, so those are three cases that I've been very involved in from the beginning, from day one, involve creatures that are about 3 feet tall, that breathe our air,
Hairless?
recognize our signals, communicate with us in funny ways, even mentally. I mean, the witnesses describe getting images in their minds and so on, in all three cases. And what's interesting is, people can argue about Trinity all they want, like they argue about Roswell, but the case in Socorro and the case in France, in Valençol, were investigated by governments, not by the local UFO group, although the local UFO group did a good job in all those cases. But they were, in Socorro, it was first the local police. The local policemen saw the craft and the beings and described what happened. He was terrified, but, when the thing took off, he thought it was something to do with some new gadget or some work in the desert. It's an area that's still in the same state today. I've gone back there with Dr. Hynek's son, with Paul Hynek a few months ago. I've gone several times there. And so after the police, turned out the FBI was in town on another case. They had no jurisdiction in New Mexico for that particular case. It wasn't a federal case, but they helped preserve the traces, the FBI way. And the local police was happy to have them there. And then there was the state police came in and did an investigation. And then people from the base, came in with experts in explosives, experts in recovery of weapons and rockets and so on, because they thought it might be something that had come from the Trinity Range that was out of its way,
right,
and had crashed near Socorro,
right,
in which case they might have responsibility, including financial responsibility, if something was destroyed or whatever. So this was very serious. I have the whole file. Okay, it's a big file.
Right.
Nobody's looking at it. I mean, the investigation in Washington now, they are saying, we're going to look at the cases of the last 12 months. Well, what kind of science is that? Can you imagine scientists reading this? And this is the way they are going to solve the UFO problem, by looking at vague pictures of lights in the sky for 1 year? Why don't they go back to those records? Those are federal records. Okay, the case in Valençol, 5 agencies of the French government. So this guy was a farmer. He had a field where he was growing plants to make perfume. So this was high-level, expensive crop. This wasn't just, alfalfa or something. And he goes there at 5 o'clock in the morning because, he wants to do to water the thing and so on before the sun is up, because it's going to be south of France. It's going to be very hot. You can't work in the field during the early afternoon. So he wants to be done with that. He sees this contraption, in the middle of the field, crushing the plants. And so he sneaks in, and he's paralyzed. Okay. Now, there is an egg-shaped object, just like the one, at Trinity, just like the one in Socorro. It's the size of a mid-sized truck. There are 2 creatures in front of it, human looking, 2 eyes, breathing air. They look at him, sort of amused, and one of them has something on his belt. He takes out, pointed at him, and that's when he's paralyzed. Now, he's not as you know, I'm not a doctor, but I've gone to doctors about what kind of paralysis is that, where you can stand up and watch something, you just can't move. They said, well, there is a type of paralysis that will just inhibit the motor, motor nerves, where but you'll still be up and aware. You're not going to fall down, in a heap. And from there, he sees them going back inside the thing. The thing takes off. It takes off like a shot out of a gun, and it vanishes in midair. Okay. Now, he goes to see the gendarmes. This man is fairly wealthy. He owns quite a bit of, several fields, expensive crops. His wife is the mayor of the town. The gendarmes are going to be very careful with him because he's also from the resistance in World War II. When he was young, he joined the resistance, and the resistance in that part of France fought in the Alps against the Germans, and they were regarded as heroes of World War II. And so the gendarmes are very careful with him. There are some things he's not going to tell the gendarmes because he thinks, and I went there, he didn't want to talk to anybody from Paris. He didn't want to be on TV. He wanted to concentrate on his experience because he thought there was going to be something else. And he was aware of some of his buddies. Now, this is a part of France where people talk, but they have secrets too. I mean, historically, there are things like that in the U.S., parts where people are not going to talk to strangers.
Right.
The only reason I could go there was that I went there with a lady who was from Paris, with the government. She was with de Gaulle's government. She had the rank of ambassador, and she had a vacation home there. So we went there for 3 days, and she knew everybody there. And he told us what he thought might happen again. And he didn't want the gendarmes mixed in with what he was doing.
Why did he think that something was going to happen again?
They evidently, and he swore us to secrecy about what it was, but evidently there was communication with the beings when he was there.
And
now,
so these beings just tiny, look like people. Did they have different features than us? Or was it just human
They are
features?
just like the ones at Trinity and like the ones at Socorro. So in that book you have actually 2, 2, and 3, you have 7 creatures that are humanoid, that breathe our air, that seem to understand us. The visual, there's visual contact. Well, we can have visual contact with animals. I mean, That doesn't mean they are human or meta-human, but there is messages that come through all of that that the witnesses are reluctant to talk about in all 3 cases. So in Socorro, finally, the Air Force went there. They threw the Air Force out because the Air Force said, well, that's just a gadget, from the base. And, that was stupid. So they finally sent Dr. Hynek there. And Dr. Hynek asked me to organize the files that were coming. I was at Northwestern at the time, working. I had done my PhD already, and I was on the staff of the computing center. And we had a small team trying to help, free, trying to help Hynek keep the files together. So we were, in communication with him the whole time. And then I put the files together, and I have the file. This is the official file.
So these people were reluctant to talk about what these creatures were communicating with them. But did they talk about it at all?
It was very personal.
Very personal.
Yeah. There had been a communication that transcended their life. There was something else, something outside. So you could almost call it a sort of a religious feeling, but it wasn't. It wasn't about divinity or God specifically, but it was about the other side of life, a bigger meaning for life. That's their interpretation. It may not be. There may be other things that they are trying to communicate.
But it was very profound for them.
Yes.
And all three cases had similar stories in that regard.
And in all three cases, there are traces that were measured. There were, there is technology of sort. And in the case of Socorro, people came up with all kinds of ideas that maybe it was a balloon, a special balloon, right? There were only 12 of them in the world and so on. Well, in the book, people haven't noticed it, but in the book, I was able to solve that problem because I found a transcript of a conversation with a man who was head of a motor pool at the on the army range at White Sands. And he had given his team some instructions on, how to make sure that the motor pool was working really well, because White Sands is so big. When people went home, they could get lost, at White Sands. And then how are you going to find them? I mean, there are tracks, but there is no paved road at the time. How are you going to, find them? So you can launch a helicopter the next day looking for, a lost car somewhere with a family in it. But so he made rules that they had to call periodically to report where they were when they went home, 50 miles away across the desert. So they could find them if there was something wrong with the car. He's driving home with his family. This is after the Socorro thing is done. They are all interrogating Lonnie Zamora, the cop who was driving that thing. And he sees a light over the mountains in the southwest towards Mexico. But it's still, it's still in New Mexico, but it's in that direction. A light that's not a star, it's really bright. And the light gets brighter and brighter, and his car dies. Now, he's head of a motor pool, for the base. Everybody reports to him, and they have all the army cars and the trucks and everything else, the half-tracks. So he looks at that thing. He tries to call his team. The radio doesn't work. The radio should work. The radio doesn't work. And the thing gets very bright, and then it recedes. It goes away the way it apparently came in. We don't know if it came in or if it just got bright. Okay. The car starts. He goes home, and then the next day he goes to his shop. He gets his staff together. He says, you guys are going to take this car apart. I want to see every screw and every piece of it and every level and everything and the seats and so on. I want to see all of that on the floor. And you're going to test it, and you're going to tell me what's changed or, if anything, how that car stopped in the middle of the desert. And they couldn't find anything. And that report was an official report, that was never published. And it nails the whole thing, that this was not a balloon. This was not an hallucination. The patrolman wasn't drunk like they accused him of, or making up a story and so on.